So I do want to acknowledge that ancestry can be a very tricky thing, actually. Of course, many people feel loss and grief over the loss of ancestors, but many other people also had very complicated relationships with their ancestors. And others have no idea who their biological ancestors are. Yet we cannot deny that without our biological ancestors, we would not be here today. So if for nothing else, we should be thankful for that. For some of us, there is a feeling or a need to carry on in some family tradition. And for others, there is a need to break with family tradition that can sometimes be dysfunctional. And despite all of that, we get to choose. Now, sometimes there are consequences for going outside the communal traditions of the ancestors, and in such cases, we are required then to find or create new community and new ancestors. I originally come from the Jewish tradition that is rich in religious tradition and ancestry. And I think it is kind of interesting that both myself and my two siblings all married outside the Jewish tradition. And when the oldest of us, my brother, married someone who was not Jewish, I remember my grandfather tearing his shirt sleeve and considered my brother as dead. By the time I got married, though, they were just happy that I got married and moved out of the house. And so, the advantage of being the youngest child, I will just say that. And I have to admit, after the birth of his first great-granddaughter, he reconciled with my brother. So time and circumstances can change tradition if we have the courage to risk the consequences. I have to admit, this story and thinking about this reminded me of the movie Fiddler on the Roof. Anybody see the show or the movie? A number of you, okay. It depicts a Jewish family in Russia in 1905 where the main character, Tevye, speaks of a tradition as a way of finding balance that allows him to know who he is. And throughout the movie, his tradition is challenged by his three daughters who seek more autonomy than was traditionally allowed. The first one not wanting to use a matchmaker, which was traditional in 1905, and instead to choose her own spouse. The second daughter not even asking permission for marriage, and then the third one marrying outside the religion. Now, even Tevye in the movie admits he has no idea how traditions got started. And each time, as you notice, even with the last one that he rejected, each time he saw the love within his daughter's eyes, and he broke with tradition. Even with his youngest daughter, whom he initially rejects in the scene that you saw, he later in the movie, when his entire life is being thrown into chaos, seeks reconcilement with her. In chaos, it is not tradition that gives us balance, it is love. In some cases, tradition gives people control. So it is understandable why in this movie Tevye is losing control over who his daughter marries, is why he is struggling. And he struggled, and he overcame. And so should we struggle and overcome the traditions that give us control. And if we do that, if we can let go of control, we will grow in love. For love is not something that can be controlled. Love can be boundless. It can transcend time and space. It is why we remember those that we love, so that we can remember what it feels like to love. so that we connect that love that was once with a love that still can be, and it can be a love that can be passed on to others while we are still alive. Now, my family's tradition is to break traditions. So it should have been no surprise to them that I found my way to Unitarian Universalisms, whose traditions are also about breaking traditions. Whose tradition it is to question the status quo and look within and to learn from experience to find our way in the world instead of accepting the wisdom of the ancestors. To look for answers in more than one book, and to understand that even the secular can be sacred if we treat it with reverence. But we also seem to be very willing and very quick sometimes to denigrate and abandon the ancestors because their wisdom is no longer our wisdom. We forget that sometimes they could only be who they could be. And because they were who they were in some instances, it allowed us to become who we are today. And so this time of year, in this cycle of seasons, let us learn not only to live in harmony with nature, but to live in harmony with each other. And to learn to find balance between the wisdom of the past, our wisdom of the present, and the acceptance that the wisdom of the future is unknown to us now. Let us recognize that our ancestors are the foundations upon which we build our lives. Let us look at it as a gift that we have received, and let us build on top of it something meaningful. May it be so.